"Join me for a swim," said the Apache woman, and the cowboy couldn't resist her soaked form. The sun was blazing high over the desert hills, turning the wide-open ranch into a sea of golden brown. Daniel wiped his forehead with the back of his hand, feeling the sweat mix with the dust that clung to his skin. It had been another long morning of checking fences and feeding horses, and he was beginning to feel the heaviness of the routine he had lived for years. His life had always been simple. Wake up before the sun, tend to the land, take care of the animals, and end the day watching the sky turn colors no one could describe. There was peace in that simplicity. But sometimes, on days like this, he wondered if peace was enough. Daniel was walking along the edge of the property, his boots crunching against the dry soil, when something unusual caught his eye. Off in the distance, near the river bend that cut through the hills, he noticed movement, ripples in the water. He squinted, adjusting to the glare of the sun, and realized it wasn't a deer or a stray horse.
He was.
She was swimming with a confidence that startled him, cutting through the water with long, steady strokes. Her hair, dark and wet, stuck to her shoulders, and Daniel couldn't help but admire the strength in her movements. She looked like she belonged in the wild, completely at home with the river and the sun above. For a moment, Daniel froze. Desk. He had rarely seen anyone in this part of the ranch besides himself, and certainly no one who carried the kind of presence this woman did. She seemed fearless, unbothered by the heat or the isolation, and yet there was something inviting about her. She noticed him then, tilting her head slightly and smiling. Her smile wasn't flirty or mocking. It was genuine, warm, and quiet. Daniel felt an odd pull in his chest, a mixture of curiosity and admiration that he hadn't felt in years.
She called out, her voice carrying across the water. "Join me for a swim," she said.
The words were simple, but the way she said them made Daniel pause. There was no pressure, no expectation, just an open invitation. He hesitated, unsure what to say. He hadn't planned on company today, especially not someone who seemed so completely untouchable and free. But something inside him, a part of him that had longed for connection without admitting it, nudged him forward. I don't know, Daniel replied, his voice rough from the heat and dryness. He could feel his heart beating faster, and his hands itched with nervous energy. It's pretty hot out here, the woman laughed, a sound like the wind rustling through the trees. That's exactly why you should come, she said.
The water feels amazing. You'll see.
Daniel shifted uncomfortably, glancing down at the dry, dusty ground beneath his boots. He had always been cautious, slow to trust strangers, especially those who seemed so different from anyone he had ever known. But the pull of the water, and the pull of this woman's presence, was stronger than his hesitation. Slowly, almost reluctantly, he stepped closer to the riverbank. As he walked, he noticed the sound of the water, clear and cool, flowing over rocks and curving gently through the desert landscape. It was soothing, almost like a balm to the dryness that had settled not just on his skin, but in his spirit. The closer he got, the more he realized how alive this place felt, how untouched and pure the water was. And then he saw her clearly, the sunlight reflecting off her wet skin, the way she moved with such ease. She wasn't just swimming. She was dancing with the river, commanding it in her own quiet way. When Daniel reached the water's edge, she reached out a hand to him. "Come on," she said again, her voice soft but encouraging. "You don't have to think about it. Just step in." He looked at her hand for a long moment, feeling an unexpected warmth from the gesture. Something about the openness in her eyes made him realize that he didn't have to be perfect. He didn't have to have it all figured out. He could just be himself. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. He nodded, slowly taking off his boots and rolling up his pants. The water lapped gently at his feet, cold and refreshing, and he felt a shiver run up his spine. As he stepped fully into the river, he felt the tension in his body melt away. The cool water surrounded him, washing away the dust and the heat and, for a moment, the weight of his lonely routine. The woman smiled at him, floating on her back, watching him with curiosity and amusement. "Psst. See? Doesn't that feel better?" she asked. Daniel nodded, letting out a small laugh. He hadn't laughed like that in a long time. Not really. Something about the simplicity of this moment, two strangers meeting by chance, sharing the quiet power of nature, felt almost magical. He started to swim, clumsily at first, matching her strokes as best he could. She guided him gently, showing him how to float with ease, how to let the water support him instead of fighting it. As they swam together, Daniel learned more about her without even asking. He noticed the confidence in the way she moved, the patience in her instructions, and the way she seemed completely in tune with the land around her. There was a sense of history in her presence, a story in the curve of her shoulders, and the calm in her eyes. He realized she was not just visiting, she was part of this land in a way that was deep-rooted and undeniable. After a while, they both floated quietly, letting the river carry them gently. The sun began to lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the water. Daniel felt an unfamiliar sense of peace, a connection not just to the woman, but to the world around him. The dusty ranch, the lonely mornings, the endless chores, they all seemed less important now. What mattered was this moment, simple and pure, shared between two people who had met by chance but were now tied by something unspoken. Finally, the woman spoke again, breaking the silence. "I'm Alina," she said, breaths. "I'm visiting family land nearby." "You are?" "Daniel," he replied, feeling a small smile tug at his lips. "Shh. I work this ranch." Just me.
Her eyes softened.
It's nice to meet you, Daniel. I think we could learn a lot from each other, you know. Daniel nodded, though he wasn't sure what she meant. He only knew that he didn't want this moment to end. Something about her presence had opened a door in his heart that he hadn't realized was closed. Best. She had made him see that life could be more than routines and chores, that there was room for unexpected moments, for connection, for warmth. The sun dipped lower, painting the river with shades of gold and orange. Daniel and Alina finally climbed out of the water, their clothes damp and clinging, their hair plastered to their faces. They laughed at how clumsy they looked, sharing a light-hearted moment that made the day feel brighter than any he could remember. As they parted ways that evening, Daniel couldn't stop glancing back at her. She waved, stepping into the shadow of the trees, disappearing slowly into the land. Daniel's heart felt a mix of excitement and confusion. Who was this woman, and why did she make him feel so alive? He knew one thing for certain: the quiet life he had always accepted as enough suddenly felt too small, and he couldn't wait to see her again. Best. After that first unexpected swim, Daniel couldn't stop thinking about Alina. Her presence, her calm confidence, and the ease with which she moved through the water stayed in his mind like a song he couldn't forget. Days that were usually filled with dust, horsework, and endless chores suddenly felt emptier when he realized she wasn't around. There was something about her that made the ranch feel larger, more alive, as if the quiet hills and the winding river were waiting for her return. It wasn't long before their paths crossed again. One morning, Daniel was checking on the horses near the river bend when he saw her sitting on a large rock by the water. She had a sketchbook in her lap, and her dark hair fell over her shoulders in the sunlight. The sight of her there made Daniel pause. She looked completely absorbed in what she was doing, yet when she noticed him, she smiled warmly. "Morning, Daniel," she said, her voice light and musical. "Come sit. The view is beautiful today." Daniel hesitated, not used to casual invitations from strangers, let alone someone like Alina. But her eyes were so welcoming, so genuine, that he found himself walking toward her. He lowered himself onto the rock beside her, careful not to disturb the sketches she had been working on. "What are you drawing?" he asked, curious despite himself. "Landscapes," she said, flipping the sketchbook toward him. "I love capturing how the light changes everything. Look at the river. It's almost golden today." Daniel leaned closer and studied the sketches. Alina's drawings weren't just accurate. They had life. You could almost feel the sun on the rocks, hear the wind in the trees, and see the water sparkling in the sketches. He had always admired the land around him, but seeing it through her eyes made him notice details he had never appreciated before.
"You have a talent," he said quietly.
"I've never seen the river look like this before." Alina smiled, brushing a stray lock of hair behind her ear. "It's all about perspective," she said. "Sometimes you just need to slow down and really look. People miss so much when they rush through life." Daniel nodded.
Her words stuck with him.
He realized that he had been rushing through life for years, not with urgency, but with habit. Days blended into each other, and he hadn't taken time to truly notice the beauty around him. Alina had reminded him that there was more to life than routine. Over the next few days, Daniel and Alina started seeing each other more often. At first, it was just chance encounters, him checking the fences, her sitting by the river. But soon, it became intentional. They would talk about everything and nothing. She told him about her Apache heritage, sharing stories of her family and the land they had lived on for generations. She spoke with pride and respect, explaining traditions that have been passed down through the ages. Daniel listened, fascinated, realizing how little he knew about the history of the land he had worked on all his life. In return, he told her about his life on the ranch, the hard work, the long days, and the quiet satisfaction of caring for animals. He shared memories of his father teaching him to ride and mend fences, of summers spent under the vast sky and of nights so still that he could hear his own thoughts. Alina listened attentively, asking questions and sometimes teasing him gently about his seriousness. Their bond grew naturally, built on conversation and shared moments. They laughed together, sometimes over small mistakes, Daniel slipping on a wet rock, Alina dropping her pencil into the river, and sometimes over memories and stories that reminded them both of life's humor. Daniel noticed how much lighter he felt after spending time with her. For the first time in years, he looked forward to mornings, not because of chores or the promise of work, but because he might see her by the river again. One afternoon, Daniel brought a small picnic to the river. It wasn't anything fancy, just bread, cheese, some fruit, and water. But Alina's eyes lit up when she saw it. "This is perfect." They sat on the rocks, sharing the food, and watched the sunlight dance on the water. Daniel felt a strange mix of peace and excitement. But he wasn't sure what it was about Alina that made him feel this way. Maybe it was her confidence, or the way she seemed so in tune with the world around her. Or maybe it was the simple fact that she made him feel seen, really seen, in a way no one else had in years. As the afternoon passed, Daniel noticed that they had fallen into a comfortable silence. He didn't feel the need to fill it with words. Alina leaned back, her head resting against the rock, and Daniel watched the clouds drift across the sky. He realized that these quiet moments were just as important as their conversations. They were building trust, learning about each other without even trying, and it felt like something rare and valuable.
But their growing connection wasn't without challenges.
Some locals began to notice their friendship, whispering comments that made Daniel uneasy. They didn't understand why he, a solitary cowboy, would spend so much time with a visitor. Alina also faced questions from her family, who were protective and cautious about outsiders. She didn't let it bother her openly, but Daniel could sense the subtle tension whenever the topic came up. Despite these pressures, they continued to spend time together, learning to navigate both the land and the boundaries that society tried to place between them. They helped each other in small, meaningful ways. Daniel showed Alina how to ride a horse across rough terrain, while Alina taught him about edible plants and natural remedies that had been used for generations. They laughed at their mistakes, supported each other's successes, and slowly the river became their shared sanctuary. One evening, as the sun set behind the hills, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange, Daniel and Alina sat on a large rock overlooking the water. The day had been long, filled with chores, lessons, and small adventures, and both were tired but content.
You know, Alina said softly, I never thought I would meet someone like you here.
I didn't expect this land to feel so alive, or for me to feel connected.
Daniel looked at her, surprised by the honesty in her voice.
I know what you mean, he said. I've lived here all my life, but I never really noticed the beauty around me until...
Well, until you showed me.
Alina smiled, and for a moment, there was no need for words.
They simply watched the river together, the water reflecting the fading light. Daniel felt a deep sense of gratitude, not just for the friendship, but for the way she had opened his eyes to a world he had taken for granted. Their bond continued to grow in subtle, meaningful ways. Daniel began to see the ranch differently, noticing the small flowers by the fence, the way the wind carried the scent of the river, the patterns in the clouds above. Alina noticed how he started to relax, to let go of his constant worries about work and chores. They inspired each other to be better, to appreciate life in ways neither had imagined before. And yet the story of their growing friendship was just beginning. Both Daniel and Alina knew that the outside world would continue to challenge them, with expectations, judgments, and the distance between their lives. But for now, in the quiet afternoons by the river, they had each other, and that was enough. As the stars began to appear in the night sky, Daniel and Alina packed up their small belongings and walked back toward their separate homes, the soft sound of the river following them. Daniel felt a warmth in his chest he couldn't name, a mixture of excitement, comfort, and anticipation. He didn't know what the future held, but he knew that he wanted to face it with Alina by his side, even if it was just as a friend. And deep down, both of them sensed that this connection, forged by a simple invitation to swim, strengthened by shared stories, laughter, and quiet moments, was something rare, something worth protecting. Something that could change both of their lives in ways they had yet to imagine. The days grew warmer as summer approached, and Daniel found himself thinking about Alina more often than he expected. Their friendship had become the highlight of his routine life on the ranch. Even chores he had done 1,000 times felt lighter when he imagined telling her about them or showing her something new he had learned. But with the growing closeness came subtle challenges, small tensions that neither had anticipated. One morning, Daniel was tending to the horses near the edge of the property when he noticed Alina walking along the riverbank. She was carrying a basket, probably full of supplies for her sketches or something she had planned for the day. He waved, but she didn't respond. Her eyes were distant, focused on the horizon, and there was a seriousness in her expression that made Daniel pause. He called her name, Alina, and she finally turned, giving him a small, almost apologetic smile. "Sorry, Daniel," she said quietly. "I was lost in thought." Daniel nodded, sensing that something was bothering her. They had grown used to light-hearted conversation and laughter, and this sudden seriousness felt strange. "Everything okay?" he asked, his voice gentle. Alina hesitated before answering. "That's my family. They're concerned about me spending so much time with someone outside our community. I didn't expect it, but I guess it's harder for them to understand than I thought." Daniel felt a pang of concern. He had suspected there might be some disapproval, but hearing it out loud made it real. He wanted to reassure her, to tell her that he didn't care about what others thought, but he also understood that family ties were important and that she couldn't ignore them. "I understand," he said finally. "I don't want to make things harder for you, but I hope you know that I respect you and your family, no matter what." Psst. Alina's lips curved into a faint smile.
I know.
And I appreciate that. They spent the morning together, but the air between them felt different, heavier, as if a new layer of reality had been added to their friendship. Daniel realized that life wasn't just about quiet afternoons and shared laughter.
There were outside pressures, judgments, and expectations that could interfere with even the strongest connection. Later that week, Daniel encountered another challenge. A sudden issue with the ranch required him to work longer hours than usual. Fences had been damaged by a recent windstorm, and some of the horses were restless. He tried to manage everything as quickly as possible, but exhaustion began to take its toll. He missed the chance to meet Alina at the river as they had planned, and when he finally returned home, he felt guilty. Alina, meanwhile, had expected to see him and was disappointed. She didn't show it at first, but Daniel could sense it the next time they met. She was quieter than usual, and there was a tension in her posture that made him uneasy. They sat by the river and the silence stretched long enough for Daniel to finally speak. "I'm sorry I didn't make it the other day," he said. "The ranch, it got out of control, and I just couldn't leave." "I understand, Daniel. It's just...
I was hoping we could spend time together. I miss these moments with you."
Daniel reached out, lightly touching her hand. "I miss them too."
"And I promise I'll do better. I don't want us to drift apart because of work or misunderstandings." Breaths. She looked at him, and for a moment, the tension eased. But both of them knew that their friendship was entering a more complicated phase. Life outside their river sanctuary had begun to press in. Responsibilities, family expectations, and the judgments of others were creating cracks in the carefree connection they had built. One afternoon, a small misunderstanding escalated into a bigger emotional moment. Daniel had promised Alina that he would meet her at the river to watch the sunset, but a group of ranch hands needed his help rounding up a stray horse, and by the time he was free, Alina had already left. He tried calling her, but she didn't answer. When they finally saw each other a day later, both were tense. But Alina's arms were crossed, her expression serious.
"I waited for you, Danielle,"
she said softly but firmly. "I know things happen, but it felt like you didn't care." Daniel felt a rush of guilt.
Daniel felt a rush of guilt. "I do care, Alina."
"I really do. I just... I couldn't leave the horses, and I didn't want anything to go wrong. I never meant to hurt you." She looked away, her eyes misty. "I know, but Sometimes it feels like your world and mine are too different. I don't know if we can meet in the middle." Daniel's chest tightened. He hadn't realized that this small lapse could create such a distance between them. He wanted to explain, to bridge the gap, but he also understood that she needed time to process her feelings. Despair. He nodded silently, making a promise to himself to be more careful with her trust. Days passed, and the emotional distance lingered. They continued to meet, but their conversations were cautious, filled with pauses and careful words. Daniel felt the weight of every interaction, knowing that one wrong word could push them further apart.
Alina, for her part, struggled with her own emotions.
She valued their friendship deeply, but the fear of judgment from her family and community made her hesitant to fully open her heart. One evening, a natural event brought them back together in a moment of honest connection. A sudden summer storm rolled over the hills, sending winds that rattled the trees and rain that soaked the land.
Daniel was checking on the horses when he saw Alina running toward the river, struggling to keep her balance on the wet rocks.
Without thinking, he sprinted to help her, grabbing her hand and steadying her.
Thank you, she said, breathless but smiling.
"I didn't expect the storm to hit so quickly." Daniel laughed lightly, feeling the tension between them begin to ease. "I've got you."
Come on, let's get to shelter before we both get soaked. They ran together to a small grove of trees near the river, the storm pouring down around them.
For the first time in days, they laughed freely, the shared experience breaking the silence and distance that had grown between them. Soaked but safe, they sat on the grass, watching the rain fall into the river and listening to the rumble of distant thunder. "I'm sorry for being distant," Alina said finally. "I was just worried about a lot of things. About family. About us. I didn't want to seem weak or careless." Daniel took her hand gently. "Alina, I understand."
And I don't want us to let outside pressures change what we have. I care about you, and I'm willing to face whatever comes, together.
Her eyes softened, and for the first time in days, she allowed herself to relax completely. "Thank you, Daniel. That means a lot."
From that moment, their connection began to strengthen again.
They had faced tension, misunderstanding, and outside challenges. But the honesty between them had pulled them closer. Daniel realized that trust was not built in carefree moments alone. It was built in times of difficulty, when patience and understanding mattered most. Alina realized that opening her heart did not make her weak. It made her human, capable of friendship, connection, and perhaps more. In the following days, they found new ways to enjoy each other's company. They explored hidden paths along the river, discovered small waterfalls, and shared quiet moments watching the sunset paint the desert hills in colors that seemed almost impossible. Each laugh, each shared story, each gentle gesture became a brick in the foundation of a friendship that was slowly becoming unshakable. But both of them knew that the challenges of the outside world were not gone. Judgments from others, family expectations, and the differences in their lives would continue to test them. What mattered now was that they had faced a turning point, an honest confrontation that had shown them the value of patience, understanding, and emotional openness. One night, as the stars sparkled above the river and the cool night air settled around them, Daniel and Alina sat together in silence. The events of the past week, the storm, the missed meetings, the misunderstandings, seemed distant under the calm sky. Daniel turned to Alina, his voice soft. "I don't know what the future holds," he said, "but I know that I want you in it. Whether as a friend or more, I don't care. I just know I don't want to lose what we have. Alina smiled, resting her head lightly against his shoulder.
I feel the same, Daniel. No matter what happens, I want us to face it together.
And in that quiet moment, with the river flowing steadily beside them and the stars above, both of them understood something important. Life would always bring challenges, misunderstandings, and obstacles. But with honesty, patience, and care, even the most unexpected friendships could grow strong enough to withstand the storms. They stayed by the river late into the night, talking, laughing quietly, and sharing small stories of their pasts. It was not a grand or dramatic moment. There were no fireworks, no declarations of love. But it was real, solid, and meaningful. Both Daniel and Alina felt the reassurance of trust, the comfort of understanding, and the excitement of knowing that they were not alone. As they finally parted for the night, both felt a renewed sense of hope. They had faced challenges and emotional tension and had come out stronger. Their friendship, tested by time and circumstance, had survived. And deep down, both knew that this was only the beginning of a journey that would continue to shape their lives in ways they could not yet imagine. The summer days slowly moved into early autumn, and the ranch took on a softer, golden hue. The heat of the desert was beginning to fade, replaced by cooler mornings and longer evenings. For Daniel, the days now felt lighter, not just because of the change in weather, but because of Alina's presence. Their friendship had deepened over the weeks, strengthened by challenges, honesty, and shared experiences. The misunderstandings of the past were behind them, replaced by trust, patience, and a quiet understanding that neither of them had expected. Daniel found himself looking forward to every encounter with Alina. He no longer measured his day only in chores completed or horses tended. Now he measured it in moments of shared laughter, small discoveries, and conversations that stretched long into the evening. The river had become their sanctuary, a place where both could step away from the pressures of work, family, and outside judgments. Here, they could simply be themselves.
One morning, as Daniel was fixing a section of fence near the river, he saw Alina walking along the path, carrying a basket filled with small items. She waved, her smile bright, and he felt a familiar warmth in his chest.
He walked toward her, eager to see what she had brought.
"Good morning,"
she called.
"I brought some things for us. Snacks, a blanket, and a little surprise." Daniel raised an eyebrow, curious. "A surprise?" Alina laughed, a sound like the wind rustling through the trees.
"You'll see. Come sit with me by the river. The morning light is perfect for it." They spread the blanket on a soft patch of grass, sitting side by side. Daniel noticed the effort she had put into arranging the little picnic. It wasn't extravagant, but it showed thoughtfulness, care, and attention to small details, qualities he had come to deeply admire.
They ate quietly at first, enjoying the food and the gentle sounds of the river flowing nearby. Then, Alina reached into her basket and pulled out a small wooden box.
"What's this?" Daniel asked, intrigued.
"Open it," she said, smiling.
Inside were a few smooth river stones, each painted with delicate patterns and bright colors.
"I thought we could make a little tradition," she explained.
"Every time we come here, we can paint a stone to remember the day, the moment, or something we learned." Daniel felt a wave of warmth. It was such a simple idea, yet it captured everything that had grown between them: thoughtfulness, creativity, and the desire to share meaningful moments. He picked up a stone and ran his fingers over the painted surface. "This is amazing," he said softly. "Thank you for this." They spent the morning painting, laughing at their attempts, and enjoying the quiet intimacy of shared effort. Daniel found himself opening up even more than before, telling Alina stories from his childhood, memories of his father, and moments from the ranch that had shaped him. Alina listened attentively, sharing her own reflections and insights. They didn't always agree, but every conversation brought them closer, allowing them to understand each other in ways that were both comforting and exciting. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, they paused to rest, leaning back on the blanket and watching the river shimmer in the light. Daniel felt a deep sense of gratitude for this friendship.
It was rare to find someone who could bring both laughter and reflection, someone who could challenge him while also making him feel completely at ease. Days turned into weeks, and the patterns of their friendship continued to grow.
They explored more of the river, discovering hidden pools, small waterfalls, and quiet corners where they could talk without interruption. Daniel began to notice details in the land that he had previously ignored. The way the reeds swayed in the water, the subtle changes in color of the hills as the season shifted, and the sounds of birds and insects that created a natural harmony around them. Bias. Alina encouraged him to observe, to reflect, and to appreciate the beauty in the small things. One afternoon, Daniel introduced Alina to some of the ranch hands. He had been hesitant at first, worried about how they might react to her presence, but he realized that including her was important. To his surprise, the ranch hands were welcoming. They listened politely to her stories, asked questions about her sketches, and even complimented her knowledge of the land. Alina's confidence and openness seemed to put everyone at ease, and Daniel felt proud to see her accepted in a space he had once believed was solely his own. Alina, in turn, encouraged Daniel to open himself to her community. She invited him to attend a small gathering with her family, where he could meet them in a casual setting. He was nervous, unsure how he would be received, but he trusted Alina and agreed. The meeting went better than he could have imagined. Her family was cautious at first, but Daniel's sincerity, humility, and respect quickly won them over. By the end of the evening, there was laughter, shared stories, and even a small toast to new friendships. Daniel realized that trust and patience could bridge differences and that genuine intentions were always noticed. As autumn deepened, the air became cooler and the days shorter. Daniel and Alina continued their visits to the river, but now there was a sense of reflection in their time together. They spoke more openly about the future, about hopes, dreams, and the possibilities that lay ahead. Daniel admitted that he had grown in ways he hadn't expected, learning to appreciate culture, history, and connection in a new way. Alina admitted that she had learned to trust again, to see that friendship and understanding could cross boundaries and break down fears. One evening, as the sun set behind the hills, Daniel and Alina sat together on their favorite rock. The sky was painted in shades of orange, pink, and purple, reflected perfectly in the river below. Daniel felt a quiet happiness settle over him, a contentment that was deeper than any he had experienced before. "You know," he said softly, "I never imagined that one simple swim could change so much. You've opened my eyes to so many things, Alina. Not just about the land, but about life, about people, and about myself."
Alina smiled, brushing her fingers lightly against his hand.
"And you've reminded me that trust and friendship can grow in the most unexpected places. I feel lucky to have met you, Daniel." They sat in silence for a while, letting the beauty of the moment wash over them.
Daniel realized that life was not about grand gestures or dramatic events. It was about moments like these, quiet, meaningful, and shared with someone who truly cared.
Alina felt the same, understanding that the connection they had built was rare and precious, something to be cherished and protected. Over the following weeks, their friendship became a foundation for growth in other areas of their lives.
Daniel found himself more patient and observant in his work, paying attention to details he had once overlooked. He treated the horses and the land with renewed care, seeing the world through a lens that Alina had helped him discover. Alina, in turn, continued her sketches and observations, but now she felt a deeper connection to the land and people around her, including Daniel's world on the ranch. They continued their tradition of painting stones by the river, each one representing a day, a moment, or a shared memory. Over time, their collection grew, a colorful testament to their friendship and the lessons they had learned from each other. Each stone was a reminder of trust, patience, and the joy of sharing life's simple pleasures. One crisp autumn evening, as the stars appeared above the river, Daniel and Alina sat together on the blanket, gazing at their painted stones. The cool air was refreshing, carrying the scent of the river and the land around them.
I never expected this, Daniel said, looking at the collection.
I didn't think life could change so much from just one day by the river. Alina laughed softly. Sometimes the smallest moments create the biggest changes. We just have to be open to them. Daniel smiled, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. He had learned that life was not just about routine and survival. It was about connection, understanding, and the courage to open one's heart. Alina had shown him that, and in return, he had offered her trust, respect, and companionship. As they packed up their things and walked back toward the ranch, Daniel realized that their journey was far from over. There would still be challenges, responsibilities, and outside pressures to navigate. But he knew that together they could face whatever came their way. Their friendship had survived misunderstandings, tension, and doubts, and had emerged stronger, deeper, and more meaningful than ever. That night, Daniel sat by the window of his small ranch house, looking out at the stars above the river. He thought about the summer they had shared, the lessons learned, and the moments of quiet joy. He felt a sense of peace, knowing that he was not alone, and that life with all its unexpected twists could bring something truly extraordinary. Alina, too, lay in her small cabin thinking about the journey they had taken together. She felt a deep appreciation for Daniel's patience, sincerity, and kindness. She understood now that trust and connection were built over time, through shared experiences, honesty, and care. And she felt certain that whatever the future held, they had created a bond that would endure. In the weeks that followed, Daniel and Alina continued to meet by the river, exploring, sharing stories, and creating memories. They discovered hidden corners of the land, learned more about each other's worlds, and celebrated the small joys of life. Their friendship had become a foundation, strong, steady, and full of hope. But as the seasons changed, bringing the first hints of winter to the desert hills, Daniel and Alina knew one simple truth: life was richer, more meaningful, and infinitely more beautiful when shared with someone who truly cared. That simple invitation to swim months ago had opened a door to friendship, trust, and connection, a door neither of them would ever close.